For over 6,000 years, one single plant has been this constant companion in human history. I mean, we've used it for food, for fiber, for medicine, even as a spiritual tool. So today, we're going to dive into the long, really complicated, and honestly, the absolutely fascinating history of cannabis. So, here's the big question, right? How did a single plant, one that ancient civilizations called a joy giver, turn into one of the most controversial and frankly multifaceted things in our modern world? Okay, let's get into it. To really understand where we are with cannabis today, we have to go back, and I mean way back. We're talking thousands of years, to the very beginning of how this plant got woven into the fabric of human society. Now, what's really wild when you look at this timeline is just how old and widespread this all is. We're seeing evidence of people growing it all the way back in 4000 BCE in China, where it was actually considered one of their five greens. The first time we see it written down as a medicine is also there, around 2700 BCE. And from China, it traveled the globe. It went to India, where it became sacred, to the Assyrians, who were definitely interested in its mind-altering effects, and even to the Scythians. The Greek historian Herodotus actually wrote about them using it in funeral rituals. So this was not some fringe plant. It was central to a lot of cultures for a very, very long time. And this right here shows just how incredibly versatile it was. I mean, in China, doctors were mixing it with wine to use as an anesthetic for surgery. In Egypt, the famous Ebers Papyrus from 1550 BC talks about using it for everything from inflammation to glaucoma. Hop over to India, and the ancient Vedas call it a joy giver, making it a huge part of their spiritual life. And yeah, even the Greeks and Romans were in on it. Pliny the Elder wrote about it for treating stuff like earaches and gout. So the takeaway here is pretty clear. For thousands of years, cannabis was a totally respected and essential medicine. Okay, so fast forward a bit. All of that ancient knowledge is about to get a massive, modern scientific revival. We're hitting the 19th century, when Western medicine kind of stumbles upon this plant and kicks off a whole new era of interest. And the guy at the center of all this is an Irish physician named William Brooke O'Shaughnessy. So he's working out in India, and he sees firsthand how people are using it medicinally. He gets curious, starts his own experiments, and finds it's this incredibly powerful painkiller and muscle relaxant. Get this, he had amazing success treating the violent spasms from tetanus and rabies, diseases that were pretty much a death sentence back then. O'Shaughnessy's work just opened the floodgates. Over the next few decades, scientists published more than 100 papers on cannabis. It became the go-to treatment for migraines, coughs, you name it. You could literally walk into a pharmacy and buy over-the-counter medicines like Pizzo's Cure that had cannabis in them. This wasn't some alternative fringe thing, it was mainstream medicine. But then, in the early 20th century, the story takes this sharp, dramatic U-turn. The plant that was a respected medicine was about to be completely rebranded as a public enemy. In just a handful of decades, its spot in the doctor's toolkit wasn't just questioned, it was totally erased. And the fall from grace was unbelievably fast. So what on earth happened? Well, it was kind of a perfect storm. First, you had medical progress. New vaccines came out for diseases like tetanus, and new synthetic drugs like aspirin just worked better for some things. The invention of the hypodermic needle meant doctors could use fast-acting injectable opiates, which they preferred. But the biggest factor? It was political. The recreational use of cannabis got tangled up in prejudice and fear, linked heavily to Mexican immigrants and African-American communities, and that lit the fuse for prohibition. And that political shift got hammered into law. In 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act basically made it illegal, even though the American Medical Association protested. By 1941, it was wiped from the American list of official medicines. Then, in 1961, the prohibition went global when the UN put cannabis in the same category as heroin. The final nail in the coffin came in 1971 with the U.S. Controlled Substance Act, which labeled it a Schedule I drug and officially launched the war on drugs. For decades after that, research just ground to a halt. But science wasn't quite done with cannabis. Some groundbreaking discoveries were about to challenge everything people thought they knew, and finally give us a biological reason for its ancient power. The really big breakthrough moment came in 1964. An Israeli chemist, Raphael Mechoulam, managed to isolate and identify THC. That's the main compound in the plant that gets you high. Now, this was huge. For the first time ever, scientists could study one specific, measurable compound instead of just the whole messy plant. It totally opened the door for modern cannabis research.
And studying THC led to an even crazier discovery. Our own bodies have their very own cannabinoid system. It's called the endocannabinoid system, and it's this huge network of receptors that helps regulate some of our most basic functions, like mood, sleep, appetite, you name it. This discovery was a game changer because it proved our bodies are literally built to interact with these compounds. It explains why cannabis has such a profound effect on us.
This new research also helped us finally understand the two most famous compounds, THC and CBD. You can think of them as the two faces of the cannabis plant. THC is the psychoactive one, the one that causes the high. But CBD is its non-intoxicating cousin, and it has shown incredible therapeutic potential. In fact, it's already in FDA-approved medicines for rare forms of childhood epilepsy, and scientists are studying it for all sorts of other things. And that all brings us to right now. After basically a century of being outlawed, cannabis is making this really complicated comeback, and it's being fueled by new science, shifting public opinion, and a booming new industry. I mean, the policy shift has been absolutely dramatic. It really all kicked off in 1996 when California passed Proposition 215, the first law allowing medical cannabis. Fast forward to April 2023, and 38 U.S. states have similar laws. That's a massive reversal from the era of total prohibition. And this isn't just an American thing. Globally, cannabis use is way up. Back in 2010, there were about 147 million users around the world. By 2022, that number had jumped to over 210 million. That's not a small bump. That's a huge increase. And it reflects how laws and attitudes are changing everywhere. But, this story isn't just about changing laws. It's also about social justice. Because even though usage rates are pretty similar across racial groups, sometimes even higher among white populations, the war on drugs disproportionately targeted communities of color, especially Black communities. So a huge part of the conversation around legalization today is about how to fix those historical injustices. And today's cannabis world is, well, it's complicated. You've got the rise of Big Canna, this massive corporate industry. You see influencers all over platforms like TikTok making cannabis use look cool, which shapes how a whole new generation sees it. But at the same time, a lot of the old social stigmas are still there, and we're all still trying to figure out the right balance between its medical, recreational, and wellness uses. So from an ancient super plant to a public menace, and now back to a legal billion-dollar industry, wow, the 6,000-year journey of cannabis is really just a mirror reflecting our own changing ideas about medicine, culture, and justice. And the most important thing to remember is that this story is far from over. The next chapter, it's being written as we speak.